You can also use Content Aware to do photo touching as well. So photo retouching, in the previous videos and lessons, I did it manually with the clone tool. So you take the clone tool, you find the right brush size, and you would take a sample and try to cover up this little blemish, and then you'd have to blend it and make it look nice. Well, Content Aware makes it a lot easier if you have that tool available, Photoshop version 6 or higher, or if you have the Creative Cloud, you should have it. So let's do the brush. The brush tool is a little bit better. So we go up here to Spot Healing Brush Tool, make sure Content Aware is selected. We're just going to go ahead and brush certain blemishes away, so certain freckles. So you can see how easy this is. Just like that. So we're just continuing to brush and get rid of her blemishes. And the smaller you make the brush, the more accurate it's going to be. You want to take the smallest sample possible. You don't want to grab a big brush and try to do it, because it's gonna take samples from nearby areas, which is the eyebrow. It's similar to the clone tool, but with an algorithm placed on it. So that's kind of how it's working, very similar to how we would do it manually, but it's just doing that algorithm. So smaller the better, get better results. So sometimes it does take a little bit of time to kind of select each blemish. There's still a little work involved, but if you want to make it realistic, it's required. I recommend going slow. Like if I did this entire patch, that actually looked good, but it looks a little blurry. But if I just kind of did a little bit at a time, it tends to look more realistic. It grabs nearby samples a little bit better. So I wanted to show you how I got to this final result, and it was a mixture of using the brush tool, the Spot Healing Brush Tool, and it was a mixture of me using the manual clone tool as well. So you could see all the different clone stamps I had to kind of smooth out her face here a little bit. So let's go back to where I ended at the last video clip. That's where we were. And sometimes this Content Aware doesn't cover up the red patches. It'll help cover up really dark areas. With big, large patches, it's sometimes nice to use the clone tool and do it manually. So let's grab the clone tool. And let's go ahead and take a sample, and I'm slowly going to use my clone tool to smooth out her skin. And you'll notice the opacity is only 47%. If I were to do 100%, it would be too harsh. I'm just doing kind of maybe just do 47, 50%, doesn't really matter. Just kind of slowly doing things that the Content Aware just couldn't quite cover up. So you can't just rely on that tool, although it's pretty neat. So just continuing to do this and blending it in slowly. And that's how I got to that final piece. So let's continue to practice with the Content Aware and the Content Brush Tool, or the Spot Healing Brush Tool. Instead of painting, sometimes with people, let's go back to the way where we grab the polygon lasso tool and do a fill Content Aware. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and select. This is going to be a little bit of an easy one, but there's still some things you have to do manually afterwards to make it look a little better, kind of patch up the rough patches. Because the algorithm is getting better with each Photoshop update, but it still is not perfect. It's not a replacement for the clone tool. It just it helps you, gets you started with some of this stuff. Just trust me, back before they had it, manually cutting things out and manually cloning them out was really tedious. And you had to do it really, really slowly. Okay, I think that's a pretty good selection. We're going to go to Edit, Fill. We're going to do our Content Aware. Click OK. Let's see how good of a job it does. Pretty good, but you can see how it doesn't look super authentic, the little texture. But that's why we go in and we manually use the clone tool and fix it up. So that patch looks a little weird, and I almost wonder if I can grab the brush version of this by getting the Spot Healing Brush Tool. Go ahead and paint it, have Content Aware on. Oh, see, that was a lot easier than having to select it again. Brush. Might get a bigger brush for that area, but everything else looks okay. Let's smooth out the texture a little bit because it does look a little funky. Let's see if we make a really big brush that does a good job. That little dark spot I don't like. That looks pretty good. Certain spots you can touch up. But there we go, the woman is totally gone. You would not even know she was there.